Hey everyone, it's Jonathan, and welcome back to iHeart Animation. Today we've got another TV series to talk about, the DC animated show, My Adventures with Superman. I've been a huge Superman fan since I was a kid. The original Superman, the animated series in the 90s, was one of my favorite shows at the time, and since then Superman has been my favorite superhero. However, in recent years, I've been so behind in superhero media. I don't know if it's the superhero fatigue that everyone keeps talking about, but I think there's just so much stuff coming out I can't keep up, and several shows in the past few years have just kind of passed me by, including My Adventures with Superman. So earlier this year I said I was going to make a point to catch up on a bunch of shows I've missed, especially animated series, and one of the first ones I wanted to make sure to get to was My Adventures with Superman. And Katie Fabrick is also a big Superman fan, so we decided to do an episode on the first season. And we actually recorded this pretty quickly after I had the idea. I got sick back in January and binged the whole thing in a day and recorded soon afterwards. But then I've had so much other stuff I've been working on that I decided to save it for later. And then last week I realized Season 2 comes out this month, so I better get this out ASAP. So here is our conversation on Season 1 of My Adventures with Superman. It's weird that I watched the show fully twice. I never do that. I really enjoyed the show.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I had watched most of it and then I caught up and I had like the last three episodes and I was like, I'll get to it, but I really wanted to sit down and watch it and I just never got around to it, so then I rewatched it all for this.
Yeah, I have not had, I'm trying to think when the last specifically Superman animated series was. It might have been the one from when I was a kid. Has there been a Superman animated television show between Superman the animated series and this one? Because like
Not
we've had
super,
other things that Superman
yeah,
was like a character in.
yeah. I don't think we've had anything specifically Superman though.
Yeah, I feel like I would remember that because Superman has always been my favorite. So anytime he's on a show, I've got to see it, and I don't remember anything in between there. Even something unmemorable and or bad, I feel like I would still remember it. But yeah, I really enjoyed this show. It was different. It was not the same as Superman the Animated Series. It was almost like an anime. Like you could tell it was very anime inspired. It wasn't like
Yeah.
fully anime, but it was similar.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I don't know that it was the same. Like Avatar: The Last Airbender would probably be the most, I don't know, similar in style because it's not anime, but it was similar to anime. I think the studio was Studio Mir.
Yeah, that's who did Korra. They didn't do the first Avatar, I don't think,
Okay.
but they did Legend of Korra. So they kind of the ones who picked up the Avatar series as a whole. So it's definitely an Avatar kind of situation, kind of thing.
Yeah. So not exactly anime, but close.
Yes. Although they have done anime, since they're based in Korea, so
Hmm.
they outsource a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, as far as Superman goes, would you say that Superman is one of your favorite superheroes?
Yes, when he is done correctly,
Yeah.
he is simultaneously one of my favorite and one of my least favorite superheroes because when he is done poorly, he is the most annoying. It makes me think of those film people who want to they have to explain a movie to you just because if you don't like it, they're like, no, 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 no. Let me explain the movie to you because obviously since you don't like there's something wrong and you just didn't get it. And you're like, wait, no, it's just I don't like sad stories or something. And they're like, no, 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 no. If you don't like it, you're like, oh no. Like when Superman's really bad, it's usually because they're like, well, see, you didn't actually get the real reason why you're supposed to like Superman. And you're like, no, I get the reason why I like Superman. But when he's good, he is so good. And I love him so much.
Hmm.
And Superman's great.
Yeah. I like sincere Superman,
Yes.
and this is definitely sincere Superman.
Oh my gosh, he's like top favorite Superman. Like he's definitely up there. He's one of the greats.
Yeah, I haven't really given it much thought, but he probably would be. I would have to like actually sit down and think about like how would I rank all the different Supermen?
Hmm.
But this one definitely gets the spirit of Superman, so he would be near the top for me.
He's such a himbo. I love him. So when did you first hear about this show? Because I'm curious, because like a lot of people thought it just came out of nowhere. So I'm just curious, like, how did you hear about the show?
I mean, I follow, like years ago when Smallville was on, there was a site called Krypton Site that I followed,
Hmm.
and I follow them on social media, so it was probably through them. But I don't always jump on things immediately. Like I used to. Like anytime there would be like a new Superman movie come out, I would be like, I gotta see this. But then I don't know. I think I've just been burned too many times because like a lot of the animated direct-to-video films, the early ones, I watched like I bought them immediately, and then I didn't really like them very much.
Uh-huh.
And then the Brendan Routh Superman, I liked kind of, but not really. And I was ultimately more disappointed with that movie. And then the Zack Snyder movie, I was very disappointed in. So at that point, I just kind of stopped immediately jumping on Superman anything. Like I'm way
Yeah.
behind on the direct-to-video movies. I never saw the new version of the Justice League, the 4-hour cut. I still haven't started the live action CW Superman show, which I've heard is decent, so I probably should at some point. But like this, I knew about it probably about the time it came out, but I
Hmm.
hadn't really jumped on it until you mentioned that it was good.
Yeah. That's cool. Because like again, I it didn't get much marketing. And so it's really interesting to hear like how people have found it. Because I remember the way I found out is I was talking to a friend and I'm just like, if I did a Superman thing, it'd be very like slice of life, kind Superman all the way, just like a wholesome story. And then immediately that day I saw like the very first art picture and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah,
And I think it was announced in like, oh gosh, when was it announced? It was a while ago.
I don't know when it would have been announced. It would have been probably a couple years ago at least, but I don't
Yeah,
remember exactly when I first heard about it. I'm just assuming that I first heard about it through Krypton site.
yeah. I think it was announced in 2021, and then you heard nothing about it since then.
Yeah. No, even though I knew it was around, I did not
Yeah,
hear anyone talking about it.
yeah. And like, even like DC, sometimes they have like a showcase every so often, and I like tuned in because I'm just like, I'm curious to see what's going on. I don't usually watch stuff like that just because I don't have time to sit for that long length of time and I can figure out all the announcements later. But I was like, come on, my adventures with Superman. And then they're like, we are still working on it. Here's another picture. And I'm like, ooh, that's the good stuff. Just like, so like I was just like really following just like any scrap of information I could find because I was really worried because when Warner Brothers merged and all that, they were canceling some DC projects. Not to rant too much about Batgirl, which I want. So I was worried that, oh, I haven't heard anything in a while. Please don't let it be canceled. And then they're just like, surprise, it's not canceled. It's actually getting a season two. And James Gunn said he liked it, so they're going to keep it around. And I
Okay.
was like, phew. So hopefully, we still get that season two. I'm kind of paranoid and I've been burned too much that even though they say there's a season two greenlit, if it's not like right in front of me, I don't believe it until
Yeah. Well, these
it's
days,
like
especially
right there.
with HBO Max, you never know.
Yeah. Unless it's physically or digitally or any way, just like actually in front of me, I'm not gonna try to put too much hope in it. But I am
Hmm.
excited for a season two.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like this show has a lot of potential. There's so many more things they could do. Like you barely scratched the surface of his rogues gallery.
Yeah.
And you really, if you wanted to, you could even have crossovers with other superheroes. Like they've already
Yeah.
referenced Gotham. Vicky Vale was in an episode.
Hmm.
So you could bring in Batman if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah, the show has barely started. I love that they started at the beginning of Superman's career because you could go anywhere from here.
Yeah.
And they're giving him this is their own version of an origin story. Like it's not one that we've seen before. Like there are similar elements, but it's
Hmm.
enough different that I don't know what's going on. And I like that because we've seen his origin story so many times. Not that there's anything wrong with doing something that we already know, but like I like that we're getting something fresh. This is
Yeah.
Superman in another universe, and you could do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
And I like that.
Yeah, exactly. I think I like about where they start is a problem I do have with a lot of superhero things currently is everything has to be the biggest thing in the world.
Mm,
And every problem has to be, even if it seems like it shouldn't be as big of a deal, it's the end of the world. Like it's like, oh
yeah.
no, their relationship's not working. Well, if their relationship doesn't work, the world's gonna explode. And you're like, well, okay. Like you're just like, calm down. Like I personally, I think that if it's smaller, you can tell a more character-driven story
Uh-huh.
as opposed to having trying to create whole exploding planets and like I'm glad they didn't just start like, oh, here's Zod immediately,
Uh-huh.
like, and then it's like, oh, okay, now we have to like quickly learn about all Zod's things and we don't really get any time for our supporting cast or just Superman being Clark Kent, which that was like one of my favorite things. Like, honestly, if
Mm-hmm.
Superman didn't show up in a single episode of one of these, I'd be fine with that if it was just about Clark Kent.
Yeah. I think I would be too, because the characters are that good.
Yeah. And speaking of the characters, supporting cast, Lois might be one of my favorite Loises.
She
And
might be one of mine too.
and definitely probably my favorite Jimmy Olsen because he actually gets to have a character, which is nice.
Yeah. I again, I think you're correct. I can't think of another. Well, Lois and Clark did have a good Jimmy.
Yeah.
So that would be in the running, but Jimmy is not
Hmm.
one that people usually focus on. He doesn't usually get a starring role.
Yeah.
And I guess he was in the Supergirl series, but I haven't watched more than like one season, and
Oh
he was
yeah, he
kind of
was.
forgettable.
He was kind of like, oh, he's kind of like that nice hot guy you kind of know.
Yeah, kind of, I guess.
And it's like he was fine, but he was
And I
kind
haven't
of
finished Supergirl, so I shouldn't
one-dimensional.
say
Yeah.
he's fully forgettable. So
Yeah.
one day I'll catch up on that, but
Yeah.
I got behind on the Arrowverse and I have not caught up.
Yeah, I will say I also only watch I think I finished the first season, but I have not finished it and I enjoyed it a lot, but
Yeah, I did
um
too, but like I was trying to watch the Arrowverse in chronological order from the beginning,
but
and
that
I
entails you
shouldn't
to
have.
watch, yeah, that entails you to watch Arrow, which
That's what I
I'm
got stuck on.
yeah.
It's Arrow has
I'm
its moments, but it's such a slog.
yeah, no, Arrow for me, I watched like a few episodes and I'm like, "Oh my goodness. Like he's not likable." I'm sorry. Like I understand people enjoy that show immensely and that is completely fine. I'm not a big CW show person anyways. It's just not my cup of tea.
I
And
used to
then
be when I was a teenager. Like I was obsessed with Smallville, but that was partly because of Superman. But I tried to watch other things that were on the CW
yeah.
too. But
Hmm.
in recent years, I guess back then it was the WB.
Yeah.
But in recent years, I couldn't tell you what the last CW show was that I
Yeah.
watched.
I think with CW, it's something that you grow up and you decide to move away from or you don't. And I'm not saying that it's a childish thing, but there is a certain bit of nostalgia to how those kind of shows are made. Like I was watching a show that wasn't even
Yeah,
on CW, and I'm like, this is the sub CW version of this thing, and I don't hate it, but it had it had that CW nostalgia-ness to it.
like teenage melodrama.
Yeah, and if that's what you're into, go right ahead. I love that's gonna sound weird. I'm not gonna finish that sentence actually. Uh, but I think that there is a good, balance of story. And I love many different shows and stuff that I would never have touched that genre before.
Uh-huh.
And I do like a couple CW shows. Smallville is fun, and that kind of stuff. But I feel like if you don't hook me with your characters, I won't enjoy your CW show.
Yeah.
And Arrow never really hooked me on the characters.
It really didn't for me either. I was only watching it because I wanted to watch the Arrowverse in chronological order so I wouldn't miss any reference. And it just got to be too much and I haven't touched it in years.
Yeah. I watched way more Flash, and I watched Supergirl as
Unfortunately, the thing I watched the most was Arrow because it was
well.
on for longer and I started at the beginning and I was like, I gotta watch this
Yeah.
start. And I should have just been like, I want to watch this show, so I'm gonna start with this show.
Yeah. And I get that. But anyways, Jimmy Olsen, as I was saying. I love how he's like a conspiracy theorist. It's so much fun. And he's like, aliens are real, I'm gonna prove it to you.
It's fun in this version. Like I used to love
Uh-huh.
like recently like I used to love this kind of character when I was younger, and this reminds me of that, so I like this version. I guess lately I have not liked it when characters are conspiracy theorists because conspiracy theories have like taken over people's minds, it seems.
I get that.
So now it kind of annoys me, even though I used to love them. The real
Yeah,
world
no,
has ruined them for me.
I can understand that. I think Jimmy balances it pretty nicely because, like, those kind of characters who are very analytical and very obsessed with the thing that other people don't believe
Uh-huh.
to that level, it can get quite annoying.
Yeah.
But I think Jimmy has enough heart and
Plus, he actually knows what
likability.
he's talking about.
Exactly. Like,
I now that I'm thinking about it, they've kind of done an opposite to the real world in that, what's his name? Steve, the other reporter. He's
yeah,
like in the real world, his character would be the conspiracy theorist ranting and raving.
yeah.
But in this world, he's the one who says that's not true. They've kind of flipped it.
Yeah, it's great. I love that realization of Jimmy when he's like, wait a minute, you're that person? And all he says is just, oh, he believes this thing? Nah. All right, that's my only only
Doesn't bother
comeback.
coming up with an actual argument. It's just, nah.
Nah. Like, he's so irritating in that way, but
Yeah.
he's likable as well because
It's
he's,
weird because in real life I would hate that person.
yeah.
But I like this character for whatever reason.
Hmm.
I also liked like I was going to talk about all the episodes in order, but since we're talking about, and not that we're going to go into detail on every episode, just like
Uh-huh.
basics, but like this character, that trio,
Yeah.
did they remind you of anything?
They gave me Team Rocket
Yes,
energy.
I knew it. That has to be on purpose.
Yeah, that has to be on purpose.
Especially Cat Grant.
Oh yeah.
She is so Jessie.
Yes, I love that because Cat Grant's always had Jesse energy. Like, and I just love how they just fully like, all right, we all know it, you all know it. Let's just lean right into it.
I as soon as they started talking, the way she talked was like,
Yeah.
this is familiar. And then all of them together, I was like, this has to be Team Rocket.
Yeah.
Were you familiar with any of the main cast?
So I had heard of Jack Quaid because he was in a Star Trek animated show
Okay.
called Lower Decks, which I gave the benefit of the doubt, but then I couldn't look at the art style. I'm sorry to everyone who loves that show. I'm very petty about that kind of stuff. I've heard it's good, so I'm glad that people enjoy it. But I had heard of him from that, and then I'm like, oh, it's the Lower Deck guy. Okay, we'll see how that works. But I love him as Superman. Like,
Yeah.
perfect. So good. So yeah, like I haven't seen him in anything else because he's in The Boys as well, I guess. But I don't watch The Boys. So
Yeah.
it seems like a lot of these people were newer. Also, I knew who played Steve because he's Vincent Tong, who voices Kai from like Ninjago, which I grew up with as a child. So that was kind of all I knew from the voice cast.
Yeah, I recognize the name Jack Quaid. I feel like just looking over his IMDb, I recognize a couple of things, but I think he was such a small character that he was not noticeable to me. Like he was
Mm-hmm.
in the Hunger Games as a character named Marvel. Don't remember
Oh,
that. He probably was someone who died.
sorry.
He was in Smallfoot, which I saw once when it came out. Haven't seen it since. It says pilot, so it must have been a small character.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything else that I recognize, it's just a small role, I'm sure. Like one episode
Oh,
here and there of things.
yeah. I'm looking up his character from Hunger Games, and now that I think about it, yeah, he was like one of the jerks, like the jerk people, and then, yeah, he died.
I mean, with Hunger Games, you probably got a 50-50 chance if they're on the cast whether they're going to make it out of the movie alive.
I'm sure he was like one of the characters who got killed by the bees.
Oh, okay.
Because like he's like in that kind of squad. There's like two pictures.
Okay, according to the Hunger Games wiki, it says Katniss skewers him in the heart with an arrow, killing him. Oh,
Oof.
he's the person who killed Rue.
Oh, good. No, okay. Not, I didn't mean Rue died.
Yeah, I know what you meant. He deserves death. It's been too long since I watched Hunger Games. I forgot which character he was, but yes, he was the one who killed Rue, and then
I
Katniss
like.
killed him.
I never really wanted. I don't really have any desire to return to Hunger Games. I never really cared for him, but I almost want to watch it again just to like spot him and be like, "Hey," and then be like, "Okay."
Yeah, for the most part, I think the rest of this cast was voice actors, like specifically
Yeah.
voice actors.
Mm-hmm.
The only one that really jumps out as not is Chris Parnell, but also he is a voice actor, like he does both.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he had the most standout, recognizable voice to me, just because it's Chris Parnell. Just there's something about his voice
Yeah.
that it just jumps out. It was kind of weird to have him as Slade Deadshot, because like,
Deathstroke.
oh yeah, Deathstroke.
Mm-hmm.
But like that character, like his voice doesn't fit, but also this version of the character, it kind of does. He's like
Yeah.
some kind of a pretty boy.
He's been animified.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think that's quite funny. Like I remember when he first walks on screen, I'm like, why does he give me like Bishonen Deathstroke vibes? And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be Wade Wilson. And then like he gets the suit and they call him Wilson. And I'm like, I called it. What did you what like I can't believe it's just like full blown anime Deathstroke, and I don't hate it.
Uh-huh. It works for this version.
Yeah, like he's such a pretty boy, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like that's not how usually Deathstroke goes. He's usually that old guy who's been around forever, and he's still super talented.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, like it's like, oh, he's old, but since he's like kind of immortalless, kind of like
Well,
he like
I don't think he, well, I'm not exactly familiar with the character. I don't think he's immortal. I think he's
I
just
don't think
like,
yeah,
unless
I
you're
don't think
thinking
he's
of Deadpool,
immortal.
who looks similar, because Deadpool is basically immortal.
Yeah, like it's less that he's immortal. It's more that he like can live forever because of enhancements, and I think he's taken a dip in the Lazarus pit a couple times.
Oh, okay.
So like he's not technically immortal, but he kind of is because of how the plot lines handle him. But yeah, like a younger version of Slade was interesting and kind of fun.
Yeah, I liked the character. It was a twist on the character, but everyone had a twist on their character. So it worked.
Yeah, and like don't get me wrong, he stank. Like he was not a good person, but
No.
I do appreciate like whenever he showed up, he's like, "Isn't it ob-" and they're like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "Isn't it obvious we're the good guys?" And you're like, "Yeah, sure, okay." Mr. Hair over one eye, dramatic pose man. I don't know, he gives me like Instagrammer vibes. He would have an Instagram and take pictures.
Yeah, I could see that. The only other voice that jumped out at me while watching this was Carrie Walgren.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't have noticed if she had just played Martha Kent. The reason I noticed her voice is because she played young Clark Kent also.
Ah,
And as soon as young Clark Kent started talking, I was like, this does
yeah,
not sound like young Clark Kent. And I looked him up. Yes, exactly. Carrie Walgren. Like there, she and a couple other big voice actors, like they do so many like young boy voices.
yeah,
And this sounded like one of those stereotypical anime and or animated series young boy voices
yeah.
that is done by an adult female so they don't have to recast every couple of years.
Hmm.
And like she did fine, but young Clark was only in 2 episodes, so why couldn't they get a young boy?
Yeah,
Like she has a role. She's Martha Kent. Well, were they trying to save money by having her do two for the price of one? It took me
maybe.
out of it a bit in his scenes because I it's Carrie Walgren.
Yeah.
It was too recognizable to me. And that's probably a me problem just because I recognize Carrie Walgren's voice. I don't know that normal people would recognize Carrie Walgren. I don't know. I just thought it would have been, I don't know. It would have more gravitas if it was a young child confused by his alien origins.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I think there are certain actors who can really pull it off, but I think there are some times where you're like, yeah, that's a female actress right
Yeah.
there, and it does kind of take you out of it a bit. But again, he is only in 2 episodes, so yeah, they
Yeah.
could have, but I don't mind too much.
No, if it had been every episode, I think I would have a little bit more of a gripe with it because it would have just been
Oh yeah.
such a huge part of the show. But since it was
Hmm.
just 2 episodes, and really he didn't have that many lines as a kid, so
Yeah.
I mean, if that's going to be my biggest gripe with the show, then that's great.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we can talk about the episodes. We don't have to like do a deep dive into every episode like we do for some movies, but I wanted to go through like the basic storyline of the show because it is episodic, but also they all tie together. Like every episode continues from where the previous one left off.
Mm.
And a lot of them incorporate characters from DC Comics that I just want to talk about the versions that they've used because they
Yeah.
put their own spin on a lot of them.
Hmm.
Like the first episode involves Livewire, which as soon as they used the name Leslie, I was like, wait a minute, is this supposed to be Livewire?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, I'm so used to like the shock jock, I don't know, female Rush Limbaugh Livewire from the animated series. So like,
Uh,
okay, they're giving her a new direction, and then she had like a suit or tech that gave her electric powers. Like, okay, they're just doing their own thing. But then she
yeah.
ended up having an accident. Well, not an accident. She was stabbed in the back by Slade.
Oh, Slade. Ruining everyone's life.
And then she became the powered Livewire.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was the main villain from the first episode.
Hmm.
The first episode was like the introduction to all of the characters, and it was like a slow intro to the world of villains too. So you mostly focus on the characters. You have Clark. This is like his intro to the Daily Planet. Lois has been there a while. I think Jimmy had been there a little while too, or was he new all the
No,
time?
Jimmy was also new.
Okay, well they're all relatively new, but Lois had been there the longest. So this is
Hmm.
like almost. Was this their first day? This is the first day on the job.
Yeah, it was Jimmy and Clark's first day, and like Lois had been there for a few months.
Okay. So he's basically just moved to the city.
Hmm.
Yeah, I liked that they went in this direction instead of starting the show with him as Superman. Like he's not Superman yet.
Yeah.
He has not adopted any sort of persona. He hasn't started saving people. He's literally in the city to find a job, which
Yep.
I liked. It reminded me a little bit of Smallville, but he's out of school, which I prefer.
And no high school drama.
Yes. Oh, definitely. Like I liked Smallville back in the day. I wouldn't want them to change it, but like we don't need that again. Smallville can be its own thing. We can have I want to like an actual Superman show. This is great.
Hmm.
I should mention too though, it opened with him as a child, and as a child, he had a shirt with that S thing Like, you know, the S.
Yeah, the S that no one knows where it came from.
Yes. Which I thought was kind of clever that they put that on his shirt.
Yeah.
And also, one thing that I noticed at the beginning, as soon as I noticed, I was like, this feels weird, but I guess it's technically correct because the Superman adventures take place in present day. So
Hmm.
this flashback would really only be like 10, 12 years ago. The car that he saved has a cell phone mounted for GPS. And I was like, oh, wow, this is weird. Because, like, I'm so used to, like, Clark is born in the 80s or 90s or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it just felt so weird that in his childhood flashback, there's a cell phone.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like, oh, there's smartphones in Superman's childhood now. Where are they now? Superman is
Yeah,
now his childhood is with smartphones.
yeah,
Feeling old yet.
kind of. Also, before he gets to the Daily Planet, I love the scene with the old lady with the donuts.
Yeah, that was sweet. I love how they really build the kind angle of Superman.
Yes, yeah. And I like that that's his introduction to Lois as well.
Hmm.
Like, I don't think he knew Lois before that because he said something like,
Yeah.
else, goodbye forever, or something like that. He didn't expect to see her again.
Yeah, for sure. He didn't know she worked at the planet, and he's just like, "Oh, hello." He gets like a instant mini crush on her, and he's like, "I'm gonna make a good impression." And he's like, "Oh, well, okay, that wasn't a good impression. Goodbye forever." And then it's like, "Oh, wait, no, not goodbye forever, because we both work together now."
Yeah, and I don't know that she has an instant crush, but you could tell that she notices his interaction with this old lady.
And she finds it endearing. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And I like that that's her introduction to him, is that he's
Hmm.
kind to old people.
Yeah. Yeah, their relationship is basically really develops to, oh no, she's hot. And then they kind of fall in love with each other's personality.
Yeah.
And then they're like, I want to tell them, but I can't because I'm too nervous.
Yeah, but I'm glad that they didn't prolong that.
Yeah,
Because
like
like
it's not the whole series.
yeah, well we'll get to it when it happens, but like I like that they got it over with in like 4 or 5 episodes.
Yeah,
They didn't prolong the, oh, she doesn't know, he can't tell her, it's impossible. Because like it took
forbidden love
years
kind of
before
thing.
he, like in Smallville, it took years before he told Lana.
Yeah,
And that just got old.
yeah. That is a thing with like television romance, where if they have that angle of just like, will they, won't they, you're just like, all right, we need more just like, if you want to start them off and they don't know each other, that's fine. But
Uh-huh.
use movie magic, they can fall in love quite quickly and get together.
Yeah.
Because I don't want, like, at least make them dating. They don't have to like get married in 3 episodes, but
Uh-huh.
like at least have them kind of like show an interest and not really lean into that drama of, oh, they don't return my feelings. Woe is I.
Uh-huh.
Or, hang on, I have a crush on you, but you are nice to this other lady, and now I'm jealous. And you're like, oh my gosh, like,
Yeah.
just calm down. Like, people can just be power couples. Let them be power couples.
Yes, yes. And along the same lines as like the drama thing, I liked that they got over the after he finally tells her and she's mad that he never told her. I was like, oh no, they're gonna play this forever. They got it over
Yeah,
with in 1 episode
yeah.
and she forgave him. I was
Oh my
like,
gosh,
yes,
they
we
talked
don't,
out their problems.
yes. Because like any other show, it would be like a season long of
Yeah,
she's pouting and angry and hanging it over his head that he lied to her. How could you lie? But no, they got over it in 1 episode. I was like, yes, this is the way to do it.
yeah. I think what helps is they are adults, and I appreciate them acting like adults. A
Yeah,
lot of those things do happen in like teenager settings where you're like,
yes,
I guess I get it because, teenagers, melodramatic.
yeah,
This was my one true love, and we were supposed to be together forever. And, as a teenager, I was very dramatic. I will say I have been a teenager and I have been dramatic. So speaking from experience, I
I
can
think I
understand that's,
think you're right. I think I'm thinking a lot of teenager examples. So
yeah.
this must be a thing for teenager
And
shows.
and I think another thing is that there is a audience for that in like teenager people, because they can like be like, oh, I relate. Like, I can't build up the courage to talk to the person I
Uh-huh.
have a crush on at school. And then people do really care about that like drama of the whole, oh, I like Edward with Bella and I like Jacob with Bella. And they like to really like lean into that for a marketing ploy. And it can be done well, but I'm a little tired of it. So
Uh-huh.
it's not my cup of tea. I've never really been big into romantic drama.
Uh-huh.
So I really appreciate Lois and Clark kind of like getting through it. I'm just like, okay, we
Yeah.
don't have to linger on it. That's nice.
Yes, it was very nice. I was so happy when they got through it in an episode and they didn't dwell on it.
Yeah. Like, and they still have relationship issues. So it's not like they're just the perfect couple and nothing ever bad happens, which I
Uh-huh.
would still be fine with. But if you want to still have relationship drama, lean into other things. It's like, okay, now that we are together and we've shared our, feelings with each other and we've agreed to be a boyfriend, girlfriend, like, okay, now how do we make our lives work together? How do we, show our affection? Because now it's completely different because we've actually said it. Do we treat each other differently? Do we keep going around? And like, I appreciate that they still have like personal issues in this aspect, that because the show writers want to write that, but they don't do the generic, we can't talk, we don't know, will they, oh, I've been betrayed, oh, you're talking to another girl, I'm so jealous, or
Uh-huh.
stuff like that. Like, it's a nice breath of fresh air. And as a person who's not a big romance fan, I don't watch romance movies. I don't think romance has to be in every category, but whenever there is a good romance, I really enjoy it. So I
Yeah.
appreciate Superman doing that and it not being annoying.
Yes, very much. But yeah, like I said, the first episode, the main villain was
Mhm.
Livewire. She's involved in some kind of a robot smuggling operation. I'm not sure if she was like supposed to be the head of like some kind of criminal organization. Like they mentioned Intergang later, but I don't know if that was what she was part of. I was kind of confused as to how she was tied into that.
It kind of sounded like they were put up to this. Like she was like not a huge criminal, and they were kind of put up into like it was like, oh, someone like got them connected and then they got together. And she kind of planned this whole thing out, but then it was falling through. She wasn't quite prepared for how big of a thing it turned out to be. That's
Okay.
kind of the energy it gave me. I wonder if like they just haven't dived completely into all of that yet, because there is still a lot of questions about how
Yes.
everyone's working together.
Well, you could be right too, because Intergang, I thought Intergang was connected to Apocalypse. Like I'm not like a super like I love DC, but I'm not like fully well versed in all the
There's
comics and
yeah,
lore and everything.
I
But
mean there's yeah, there's so much.
as far as I knew, I thought Intergang was something connected to Apocalypse. So maybe they're setting that up. Maybe they just haven't revealed that, and that's why I was confused because we weren't told.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the deal.
Yeah, they're supplied by Apocalypse technology and stuff to
Okay.
cause chaos. I
Well,
knew that off the top of my head. I did not Google it.
that could maybe make sense because, like, we'll get
Mm-hmm.
into it later, but it's revealed that all this technology is Kryptonian. So maybe they're
Chun
just
chun
doing their own
chun.
twist on it.
Yes. It does have Apocalypse. Like I was thinking Apocalypse was kind of behind it because of like the twist and the reveal at the very end of who's kind of behind all this.
Well, I don't know if, and maybe there could be more than one person pulling strings, but like at the beginning, well, I guess at the beginning of episode three, because the opening song montage thing, it
Mm-hmm.
shows like all the villains. You see one in silhouette, which I later thought, well, maybe that's supposed to be the general. But for a while, I was just thinking it was going to be revealed to be Darkseid.
Yeah.
It's just a silhouette with red eyes.
Or it could be because like all of the technology, whilst it's Kryptonian, it looks like it's made by Brainiac because it's got his symbol on it, all of it, which is the three dots connected. And
Yeah.
then at the very end, he shows up.
Yeah. Which I didn't realize it was Brainiac until I saw the subtitles that said Brainiac. I was like, oh, wait. And then I watched it through again. Like, I watched the series twice, and then I was noticing the Brainiac symbol on things. And I was like, oh, wait, I should have
Yeah.
noticed this the first time.
So looking at that shot of all the villains, I think that is the general. It looks to really capture his silhouette.
Yeah, it probably is. I think I just was thinking before I knew who the general was that it was going to turn out to be Darkseid.
Yeah, like I mean, jumping to one of the biggest DC villain icons is not a stretch, especially with all the space and alien kind of
Uh-huh. Which
stuff.
I'm glad that they didn't go straight to Darkseid because he's like the Thanos of DC almost. And
I mean,
like
basically, he is the Thanos of DC.
I'm glad they didn't go straight to him. They're like working their way up.
Yeah,
Like you had an earthly threat, even though it was alien technology, it was more of an earthly threat for the first season.
yeah.
And I'm going to assume that in the next season we're going to get Brainiac and maybe Zod. It didn't say, but I am assuming that that was
I mean,
Zod.
I'm assuming that's Zod. He gave heavy Zod energy, and he says they will kneel, which is the
Yes.
Zod thing. So,
Yes.
hi, Zod. Funny meeting you here.
But yeah, they're working their way up, so we don't need DC Thanos yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first episode ends with a big robot fight, and Clark
Hmm.
saves the day, but he's not in Superman costume yet. He wears like a pink hoodie and a fireman's outfit,
Yes.
like some random stuff that he found,
Yeah.
which I thought was kind of cute.
Hmm.
Just to have him find some random stuff at the crime scene and like, oh, put this on quick. But then the next episode opens, and this is where I started realizing that, oh, they're really doing their own thing because you have another flashback to young Clark, and his parents are showing him his spaceship, but the Jor-El hologram does not speak English, and he seems more menacing than you would expect.
Yeah.
Like, Jor-El is always kind of a benevolent figure, and this didn't give benevolent vibes.
Yeah, and I think the reason why is because you can't understand like him, and he kind
Yeah.
of gives this like authoritarian, because if you think about it, when you think of anything that's Jor-El ever says to Superman, you could take it kind of like it's not unloving, but it's usually very informative and not
Hmm.
really a conversation a son and a father have. Like it's kind of like, this is your planet and this is what happened. And now you must continue to help these people, blah, blah, blah. So, like, I think when you take away the aspect of you being able to understand him,
Yeah.
he can come up far more menacing.
Yeah. But yeah, that opening scene ends with young Clark freaking out and burying everything. He basically doesn't want to know his past. So
Hmm.
then you realize that present day Clark also has no idea who he is.
Yeah. Which is completely fair, but like, with a child and
Yeah.
suddenly this guy is shouting at you and
Uh-huh.
you're floating in space and all that. Like,
But yeah, back in present day, you have Lois and Jimmy now obsessed with finding Superman, and you learn that Jimmy has like a YouTube channel or Twitch channel, something where he talks to an audience about his conspiracy theories. And he goes by the
mhm.
name Flamebird, which I believe
Yeah.
is another reference, but I don't know the character. Is Flamebird a DC character?
So Flamebird is a DC character. The original creation of Flamebird was actually that Clark and Jimmy end up going to Kandor, which is the tiny Kryptonian city that Brainiac shrunk.
Oh yeah.
And when they get there, they have to adopt superhero names of a local legend about Flamebird and Nightwing. So that's where those two original names come from. So the reference is to Jimmy Olsen being called Flamebird in that section of that story.
Okay. Who was Nightwing then?
Clark Kent went under Nightwing.
Okay.
And then the reason how Nightwing is now Dick Grayson is because Superman told him the story of that, and he got inspired by that story, and he adopted the name of the legend.
Okay.
There is now a new Flamebird. I don't know how active she is, but there's a couple of different people who've taken that. I don't think she's taken off as much as like obviously Nightwing has, but that but I do appreciate the reference to Jimmy Olsen's tiny little heroic run around where he had a ridiculous little costume.
But yeah, after the whole thing in the last episode, Clark is now deciding that he wants to figure out who he is. So he goes back home to the farm and he discovers that his spaceship has grown in the years since he's buried it, which was interesting. And another thing that tells you like this is going to be a different thing going on here.
Yeah.
This is not the origin that you know. And then he gets like a vision from Jor-El about the destruction of Krypton. And then he has like a Sailor Moon transformation sequence.
Beautiful. Absolutely wonderful. My only complaint is I wish he'd done it every single time he put his outfit on. Commit to the bit, Superman.
That would be hilarious. I don't know if that would be too silly, but I like the visual.
Yeah, I actually, honestly, though, I kid because honestly, if he did it every single episode, I think that it could get tiring and you're like, okay, Superman, hurry up and get your outfit on.
Yeah, but I like they did it once. That was fun.
Yes.
But I also like that they kind of combined two of the origins for the super suit in that some origins make it so that it's a suit that he was given on Krypton and other origins make it so that it's a thing that his mom made for him.
Yeah.
But they combined that because they gave him the suit without the underpants on the outside. And then he gets back home and she's like, this needs something like shorts or a belt. And then she gives him shorts and a belt.
Yeah.
Which to me, that's like the way Superman should look. Like, I get that it looks cooler when he doesn't have the underpants on the outside, but like, I don't know, he looks kind of naked when he doesn't have the underpants.
Does it look better?
I like the little red shorts. But then back in Metropolis, you have Lois and Jimmy investigating the scary lady with the robots. And this is where you have Slade Wilson, Deadshot, right? I'm not mixing that up.
Deathstroke.
I keep mixing up all of the
No, that's
too
fair.
There's too many slightly different, similar bad guys.
No. I mean, yeah, Deadshot and Deathstroke, like, that's just mean of DC to do that.
And then you've got Deadpool from Marvel, which complicates things even further.
I mean, that was kind of his whole deal, but yeah.
But yeah, they're all coming together. I'm not sure, like he stole, I don't remember who stole from who. Like I said, I was kind of confused about, like, obviously we find out that the ultimate origins were Kryptonian, but I'm not sure how exactly they fit together, but they're not together here. And she's going after him to tell him to stop following her.
Yeah.
Ultimately, this is where it leads to, like, Clark comes back, there's a fight, she gets stabbed in the back by Slade. I'm just going to call him Slade so I don't mix up the names. I'm
Slade
used to
Wilson.
him, like, I watched Teen Titans too, and he was always just called Slade there as well. So to me, he's Slade anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, he stabs her in the back, but in the device, and she gets fully transformed into the superpowered Livewire. But of course, Superman is ultimately victorious, and I loved that after the fight, he cleaned up the city.
Yeah. No, that's another great little thing. This is the Superman who will save cats from trees and clean up the city.
Yes. And then you've got Lois and Jimmy thinking that they're now going to break this huge story, but ultimately it's given to Cat Grant, Steve Lombard, and Ronnie Troop, who are all rival reporters at the Daily Planet.
Yeah. They're like actual reporters as opposed to them being interns.
Yes. Yeah, maybe we didn't mention it, but Clark, Lois, and Jimmy are all interns at the Daily Planet. They're not reporters. But then you have a thing at the end. After everything is over, Leslie wakes up tied to a table and is being tortured for information by Slade. and you've got two people behind him, one of which is obviously Amanda Waller,
Hmm.
but the other one you don't know yet. He's called the General later on, and you don't know who that's going to end up being yet.
So suspicious.
Yes. Well, so in the other episode, I don't know that they'd ever called him the General before, but then you have an episode where Lois is talking about her father and something like you get the idea that they don't have a very good relationship. And
Yeah.
then later on, this guy is called the General. I was like, wait a minute, he's going to be her father, isn't it? This is General Lane. They're just not
Yeah.
calling him General Lane to make it a huge reveal at the end.
Chun chun chun. My adventures with Superman more like my girlfriend's dad is trying to murder me because I'm an alien. That's the anime
I was just
name
going to
for
say,
the
that
show.
sounds like an anime title.
My girlfriend's military dad is trying to murder me because I'm an alien.
Yeah, this is also where you get the reveal that this is Task Force X.
Bum bum bum. In case you didn't guess that from Deathstroke being there.
Well, I didn't, but also that's probably because I kind of get some of the different groups mixed up.
I mean, there's so many, and like, not only is there so many, but like, so many people are in different tasks, like groups and stuff.
Uh-huh. Well, I
So,
guess
like,
I associate Amanda Waller more with Suicide Squad, and I guess maybe Task Force X is sort of the same thing, but just not called Suicide Squad. But it's also two different things, but also it depends on which version of which thing you're talking
yeah.
about. That's why I there's so many versions that I kind of get confused as to which is which.
I mean, I think they're technically the same thing.
Yeah.
The thing is that just Suicide Squad is like the cool name you call it, but I don't think like the government calls it the
Oh, that's
Suicide
true.
Squad
That's true. You're
because
right.
that is kind of a corny
The
name.
government wouldn't
The
officially
government,
name something
yeah,
Suicide Squad.
yeah. They'd be like, no, it's Task Force X. It's
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's how it works.
Yeah, you're right.
If I'm
Yeah.
remembering my limited amount of knowledge on that side of comic books.
Yeah, the next episode is focused on Lois trying to get an interview with Superman, but Perry has given the Superman beat to the reporters who scooped them in the previous episode.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I was like, they're 100% team ranked.
Yeah.
And then instead of like focusing on Superman, Lois decides to go after these criminals. This is where you get the name drop of Inner Gang.
Mm-hmm.
And you have Silver Banshee, Roughhouse, and Mist. And I knew the name Silver Banshee from her. I recognized her as the person with screaming powers, but I
Yeah.
didn't recognize the others. I guess they are from the comics, but Silver Banshee was the only name I recognized. So they go and investigate them. They're all using the same tech from Livewire. She had sent the tech out to different people to get it away from Slade.
Mm-hmm.
So now a lot of different criminals around the city are using this stuff. And then you have a big fight scene where they're trying to stop them. I think they're robbing a bank. But then the tech starts malfunctioning and it starts behaving in ways that I was like, is that supposed to look like Superman's ship? Yes, it was supposed to look like Superman's ship. And Superman also has like some kind of apocalyptic vision during the battle, presumably brought on by the malfunctioning software in whatever this tech is.
Yeah. Like the lesser known power of Superman is his foreshadowing senses.
But yeah, he pretty easily defeats these guys, but then they're taken away, and one of the rescue team is clearly Slade in disguise. They wouldn't know that, but us as the audience know that's Slade.
Yeah. No, it couldn't have been. He looked so nice. He didn't look like he had ill intentions at all.
And then afterwards, Superman agrees to an interview with Lois, and he's pretty much completely honest with her about everything because he has no idea who he is,
Yeah.
but she thinks he's lying,
Yeah.
which ends up being the crux of the next couple of episodes. Her
Like, she's
incorrectly
not
assuming that
wrong.
he has, not entirely, but like
Yeah.
he wasn't lying about not knowing who he was or where he was from. He just
Yeah.
wasn't
He
honest
was
in the fact that
lying.
he's Clark.
Yeah, he was lying, but not in the way she was thinking he was lying.
Yeah. And then in the next episode, you get their conversation about that. And he says, maybe he's just a nice guy who wants to help people. Clark, if you had powers, you'd do that, but we're not talking about you, which I liked that
Yeah.
conversation. So then in the next episode, they're assigned to go help Kat with a story on this gala being thrown by Professor Ivo, who I think like there was a billboard in a previous episode
Yeah.
with his face on it. And this confused me too, because I thought I remembered him being the person behind the Amazo robot. And
Yes.
then he ended up being Parasite. And I was like, oh, I forgot. I must have mixed up what I was remembering. But then I looked it up.
Well,
He is
yeah.
the creator of Amazo. They've just
Hmm.
combined two different characters
Yeah.
here,
Yeah, they combine the two different characters.
which is fine. Like I said, I
Yeah.
have no problem with them doing their own thing.
Hmm. No, it is a bit confusing when they are like, especially since they introduce Cadmus later, and you're just like,
Hmm.
wait,
Yeah.
too many. And then we've got the government, we've got Cadmus, we've got Amazo. Like, calm down. I have to remember which one does which because they're all terrible
Yeah.
in their own ways.
Yeah. But also Dr. Ivo has an assistant who I kept wondering, like, is he going to be important? And he does come back later, but like, I don't know if he's supposed to be a character, but I saw people talking online because I started searching for who he might be. Some people think he's Lex Luthor.
Huh.
I don't know if I buy that. Not just because he
Hmm.
has hair, but I feel like Lex wouldn't be the assistant to somebody. Like he would be the person in charge.
Do you remember his name?
Alexander.
Okay.
And Lex's full name in a lot of media is Alexander. So that's probably the big reason why people think it's Lex.
Yeah.
But there apparently is another version of Parasite, and the person's name it was Alexander.
Yeah.
So it could also be that. I think I buy that more than I buy that it's Lex Luthor.
Yeah, I feel like they would. I don't want to be rude to Alex, but I feel like they may pick a more iconic look for Lex. Like
Yeah.
he is very like I could see him in another anime kind of character. Like I've seen this character, buzzing around in a different anime. He's
Yeah.
your background actor,
Kinda,
and you're like,
yeah.
oh, I've seen that background actor before.
Hmm. But yeah, like I said, this Dr. Ivo is Parasite, so this ends up with a big fight
Hmm.
between Parasite and Superman as Dr. Ivo has a grudge against people in his company trying to throw him out. So I don't know if he was going to kill them. Ostensibly, he's like trying to lure in Superman, but it really seemed like he was going to try and kill that one guy.
I mean, yeah, that was just a bonus if he died, I think. He's just like, I'm going to throw you out the window because on the happen chance that Superman doesn't show up,
Uh-huh.
I get a bonus. You're dead. I don't have to deal with you. I mean, he's crazy. So,
Yeah.
they're like, he's going insane. I'm like, man, that ship has sailed. This guy's been nuts since the beginning.
Hmm. Yeah, of course, Clark is easily able to defeat him, and he ends up all gross and withered at the end. But then they also discover that his lab has been cleaned out. So where did all his tech go? It's probably in the same place that all the other tech is disappearing to, because he
Hmm.
also ends up with the other guys, even though he wasn't technically connected. I have a feeling like they didn't show it, but I kind of thought Slade was going to show up and cart away his withered body.
Yeah, I think they do mention that the Parasite and Amazo tech was kind of based off of the government technology. So whilst he didn't get it, it was heavily based off the technology the Kryptonian technology.
Okay, that
I
makes
think they mentioned
sense.
that, so that's why they had him on their radar,
Okay.
and that's why he knew how to operate the other technology and stuff for them.
But yeah, at the end of this episode is where you get the reveal where Lois figures out that Clark is Superman because she finds an old newspaper article about a mysterious flying boy in Smallville.
Hmm. I like how she draws a pair of glasses on Superman. It's like, Clark Kent. Uh,
And the next episode is her basically trying to prove her hypothesis. And you're also following Jimmy as he's doing his Flamebird thing. This is where you have Steve coming in as a troll saying nah to
nah.
every theory he has. And you also have Clark thinking about confessing his feelings for Lois, but then he doesn't because she's still upset about Superman potentially lying. And then this is the only time that I thought Lois was dumb in this show. She decides to cuff herself to Superman. It's like, what is that going to do? He's obviously strong enough to break whatever little earth metal thing you've got wrapped around his wrist.
Yeah.
He leaves it on for long enough that it was like, okay, well, maybe she did have the right idea here, but I don't know. It just seemed like the one time that she actually did something unintelligent.
Yeah, it had a bit of an air about like desperateness and it's just you just didn't consider it kind of thing. So,
Hmm. But yeah, the big criminal for this episode was a person using a heat gun. And I didn't realize that she was supposed to be the character Heatwave.
yeah.
And I'm not 100% familiar with Heatwave, but the Heatwave character was in the Arrowverse. So I
Yes.
remembered the Mick Rory guy from
Yes.
the Arrowverse. I was like, oh, wait, that's supposed to be the same character?
Hmm.
But again, they're doing their own thing with it, so that's fine.
I personally like this version of Heatwave. There's not really a word to describe them because it's the male equivalent of a female character type, but they're not really equivalent to each other. But she's got like kind of himbo energy. And I know like himbo is based off of bimbo, but bimbos and himbos are very different.
Yeah, I know what you
So, but
mean.
yeah, she's very himbo. I don't know. I think we should popularize herbo. We should call them herbos.
That sounds like
Cause
some sort
Shiba,
of mid 90s electronic pet, like a
right?
Furby.
Yeah,
It's Herbo, your new
herbo.
favorite pet robot puppy alien.
It's like a Furby, or it gives me like Weebo from Flubber. Like it would be like some sidekick
Yeah.
robot character. It's Herbo, my favorite Volkswagen Beetle, Herbo. Yeah, but I appreciate female himbos. I think that there should be more of them.
But yeah, this episode ends up with him obviously breaking the handcuffs and leaving Lois behind to go fight her.
Hmm.
But she is, again, Amanda Waller shows up along with the general, and now they're fighting, and Slade is there. And at this point, they're trying to take Clark out. Like, they want to kill him. But there's a bridge collapse, and the general says that everybody needs to stand down because Clark is going to save the people on the bridge.
Yeah.
And Waller's not happy about this. She wants him taken out at any cost. Doesn't matter that the other people are going to die. But he is in charge, so she has to listen to him. And they leave him to save the people on the bridge.
Hmm.
After that, he goes back to Lois, and she wants the truth now. And to get the truth, she decides to jump off the building so that he's forced to save her.
Hmm.
And then she's furious that he lied to her. Then that's where I was like, oh no, they're going to draw this out now. Thankfully, they didn't. You do have like a cliffhanger there, but they work it out through the next episode. But
Hmm.
the actual cliffhanger of this episode is Jimmy was kind of abandoned by them because they were all planning to go on a Bigfoot hunting expedition for his flame bird thing. And they didn't show up because of all the other stuff that was going on. So he goes alone. And then at the very end, you see him being kidnapped by a giant gorilla,
Yeah.
which, because this is DC Comics, you're like, okay, who's this? But there was a mention. I don't know if it was this episode or a previous episode. He said something about a gorilla, a super intelligent gorilla in France or something. I was like, okay, this is Monsieur Malas.
Yeah.
And yes, it was.
Yes.
But she's not one of the gorillas that gets used a ton.
No.
So I was glad that they went with him over Gorilla Grodd.
Yeah. Like I'm a big fan of Gorilla Grodd, but I really do appreciate getting more different ape representation in DC.
But yeah, the next episode is Lois and Clark realizing that Jimmy is missing and they need to go find him now. They end up in the woods where he disappeared and they find his phone with a video from his kidnapping with the gorilla.
Yeah.
And then you have Jimmy waking up in the lab with Monsieur Mala and the brain. And I think they're going to kill him. But he's so excited to have been correct about super intelligent apes and everything else that's going on that they decide to listen to him. Or Monsieur Mallah decides to listen to him. The brain still wants to kill him. They're going in a slightly different direction with these characters because, as far as I know, they're always evil. And in this episode, it's more the brain is the evil one, and Monsieur Mallah is kind of happy, even though they're not doing ethical things. He's
Yeah.
a nicer character than the brain is.
Yeah.
So he lets him out and he's like showing him around the lab because he actually seems to appreciate their work. And then Jimmy like immediately starts oversharing about his friends who abandoned him and he sees them becoming friends even though the brain is protesting against everything that's going on around here. And then he gives them their backstory. This is Cadmus Labs. Monsieur Mallah used to be a regular gorilla until he was experimented on and became super intelligent. And the brain used to be a regular human. And I'm not exactly sure what the timeline was. Like, were they a couple before or after the explosion?
Um,
Like, they're not like married or something, but they're like in love, I think.
yeah, they're definitely in love. They're definitely wacky evil scientist boyfriends, but I'm
Neither
not.
one of them is technically a boy. It's a gorilla and a brain in a robot suit.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I think they were like slightly had feelings for each other. I think they probably finalized it a bit more at this point, but I mean they placed their hands on each other's shoulders. If that's not a sign of love, I don't know what is.
I just wonder what they saw in each other because clearly one is a little more evil than the other. Maybe it's an opposites attracts type thing.
Yeah. It's like I love it when you talk about your evil schemes.
But yeah, there was some sort of experiment going on with a black hole. It explodes. Everybody dies except them. And
Mhm.
well, the brain would have died. I'm not sure exactly how he was saved, but he's now a brain in a robot body. And also, why
Power
does he
of
go by
love.
the brain now? Like, what happened to his real name? Because he used to be a human.
Maybe, when you're an evil scientist and you lose your body and you're just a floating brain, you found your true self, and your true self is just the brain.
I like this explanation. But back outside, you've got Clark and Lois still searching, trying to work out the differences. She's still mad at him for lying and won't
Mhm.
accept his explanations. But they're interrupted by a bunch of killer robots, and he starts losing his powers. And she finally comes around because these robots are blasting them, and he jumps between them. And he could have actually been killed because his powers are
Mhm.
disappearing, and he deliberately risks his life to save her. So at this point, pretty much all is forgiven.
Mhm.
And then they're trying to break into this lab, and the power goes out, and the brain and Monsieur Mallah go out to confront them. But Jimmy tells them that these are his friends, that they say something like, the ones that abandoned you. So they give
Oh,
them.
right, the friends, the bad ones.
Yes. So they pretend to give them space to talk. But I love that the brain says he wants to watch them fight.
It's like, oh, but love, I want to watch them fight.
I love how comic book evil he is.
Yeah, I love how comic book evil he is, and then like he's just got his patient gorilla boyfriend who's just like, now, we'll do evil later. Let's go. Like,
I love how just ridiculous this entire scenario is. It's a brain in a jar with a gorilla boyfriend.
like I'd watch a whole spin-off show of these two, I think. Like a short spin-off. Don't drag it out for a long time, but like, 10 episodes. Yeah, I'll watch that.
I mean, they still could. We don't know exactly where they went. They could be
Yeah.
planning something with their characters later on.
The name of it would be I'm a brain in a jar with my gorilla boyfriend.
Really lean into the anime.
Yeah.
Now I'm just imagining the brain looking at the gorilla and like big heart anime eyes and the glowing pink
yes.
anime cheeks on the brain's outer shell.
It's got all the sparkles fly into the air.
Yes.
And it's just like, monster.
This needs to be a thing now. But yeah, they are working through the differences, and then they mention the robots, and you hear over the intercom Monsieur Mala asking what he means. So they've been listening to this whole thing this whole time. And then they reveal the robots weren't theirs, and then they're suddenly surrounded, and Brain recognizes them as from Task Force X.
Hmm.
And then, in order to defeat them, they decide to turn on the black hole and suck all the robots in. I was like, this is a terrible idea. But it somehow works because all of the robots get sucked in, and somehow they manage to save themselves. And they're all fine because it manages to stabilize itself just in time and becomes a wormhole instead of a black hole.
Hmm.
So they decide they've got to leave now. Their cover has been blown. They invite Clark to join them because they know he's being hunted by Task Force X, and they warn him about the general. And then they walk into the wormhole and are gone.
Yeah. To live their wonderful evil scientist boyfriend life, I assume.
Having interdimensional adventures.
Interdimensional evil experiments. I want to shout out to the people who obviously watched Gurren Lagann, the anime, with those little mutants that they had made, because those are literally just robots from Gurren Lagann, which
Oh, I
I was
didn't
like,
realize they were
hey.
actually a thing. I just thought they were weird little creatures made up for one scene.
Yeah, like they are, but like they're heavily like if you ever like just look up the robots from Gurren Lagann, you're just like, oh yeah, that's obviously what the inspiration was for.
Okay.
It's just quite funny. They're just like heads with arms and legs.
Also, at the very end, you get a scene with the general investigating along with Dr. Ivo in a prisoner's uniform.
Hmm.
And the wormhole is off. So did Lois, Clark, and Jimmy turn it off? I don't know. Either way, they can't follow them. So,
It's a one-time trip.
and you get dialogue here where you basically know that Dr. Ivo doesn't actually want to help the general. He just wants to take down Superman. That's the only reason he's helping.
Hmm.
So in the next episode, you have Clark taking Lois and Jimmy to the farm to show him his ship. I guess we should mention too that it was revealed that Jimmy also knew that Superman was Clark. Clark was Superman.
Yeah.
He figured it out on his own, which after I watched it the second time, I was like, Clark barely tried to hide his powers from me in the first episode. Like he's
Yeah.
smashing alarm clocks, breaking things, ripping through his shoe. Like there's no way that no one would not have noticed this.
Yeah, I love that where like Jimmy is just like, obviously I figured it out like we've been living together. Like you ripped open the door the first day we met. And then like in the first episode, like Jimmy's just like crazy how our alarm clocks keep exploding. Like,
Yeah,
it's like yeah, he obviously knew.
yeah. But then you have Clark and Lois going to start officially dating, and they're going to get ready for their dates when Mr. Mixyaz-Pedalec shows up. I was like, they're doing him already?
Yeah.
Like that would be a character that I would not expect to show up until like season 2 or 3 because he's a bizarre character. But they're doing their own thing with him because he's not the just mischievous little imp from
Yeah.
other versions. Like he
Hmm.
calls himself a chaos god, and he's not all powerful. Like other versions of Mr. Mixyaz-Pedalec are kind of all powerful. Like he could literally do anything.
Yeah.
But this version needs Superman's help because wherever his powers are from, they're somehow able to be warded off by some sort of anti-interdimensional technology. So he's not all powerful. He needs Superman to help him physically break into a place. But he doesn't tell him that. He basically says Lois is in danger. We got to save her.
Hmm.
And he just believes them. I guess this is where you get more himbo vibes because he just believes him. And yeah, Lois is not in danger. She's getting ready for the date. But then she is met by a group that I don't know if they're from the comics or not. The League of Lois Lanes. I have never heard of them before. So if they're from comics, they're not ones I've ever read. But I did like that their leader, that they call Lois Prime, looked like the early comic book version of Lois.
Yeah, I really appreciate all the different like art styles that they captured.
Uh-huh.
I think they're a new thing to this series though, because I don't think I've heard anything about that either.
Okay. That's a good concept, though. I like it.
Yeah.
But it's not entirely Lois Lane's because there is a Jimmy who is named Jelena, who is basically just Jimmy but a girl. She even has the Flamebird account. And when she said
Hmm.
something about also being a Flamebird, I was like, oh wait, is this going to be like the superhero version? But no, she's also the online nerd type
Yeah.
Flamebird. And she talks about a horse, like a telepathic horse. Was this supposed to be a reference to Supergirl's horse in the 70s comics? Like, I know the 70s had like everybody gets an animal sidekick, and I think Supergirl's was a horse. Is this supposed to be her horse?
Maybe. I feel like there's multiple telepathic horses in the GDC universe, but or it could literally just be a throwaway line that they just were like, what's the craziest thing we can think of? So like, but it very well could be a reference.
I feel like there's no throwaway lines in this in this
Yeah,
show.
like so many things.
Everything Jimmy talked about when he was doing his Flamebird thing, everything I recognized as like an old comic book weird thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's probably a reference to something, and it's probably Supergirl's thing. Can't think of any other horses off the top of my head like that.
But yeah, this League of Lois Lanes are trying to find Superman because they think he's in league with Mxyzptlk, and they say they were in the process of arresting him, but a portal to a previously unknown universe opened, which was theirs, and he escaped, which basically this was Monsieur Mala and the Brain.
Hmm.
When they opened their portal, that opened a portal for Mr. Mxyzptlk to escape into their universe. So he's using Clark to rob this vault that was shielded from his interdimensional powers. And there's a bunch of DC stuff in here. It's the stuff that I wouldn't even recognize, but I noticed a few things. So it's like a Green Lantern ring. You could see Dr.
Hmm.
Fate's helmet.
Hmm.
I'm sure there was tons of things that I didn't notice. But the main thing he's after is a recorder that used to belong to Lois Prime. And he gets that. And at that point, you also get the reveal that the League didn't even need Lois and Jimmy. They just wanted them out of the way
Hmm.
because they think that Superman is evil. I guess in the dimensions that they're from, Superman is always evil because they have this other thing that, well, I don't remember exactly how it went. There's a file that Mr. Mxyzptlk gives to Lois that shows Superman destroying a city.
Hmm.
So I think that the implication is that he's always evil in the versions of the universe that the Loises are from.
Yeah.
So this is again where I started questioning what was going on with our Clark's ship. Because up until this point, you haven't really gotten any good vibes from anything about his origin.
Yeah.
So yeah, we don't know yet. And I like that they're leaving that mysterious. But eventually they are able to track down Mr. Mxyzptlk, but he steals their ship, leaving them all stranded, except our Lois, who was locked up on the ship, and she agrees to help him break into the League's headquarters because of the way the other Loises had treated her.
Hmm.
He also breaks into a storage area to steal a little bowler hat,
Yeah.
which was a nod to his comic book version. It turns into a crown, but I liked that before it turns into a crown thing, it was a little hat.
Yeah.
And this hat apparently is the key to his powers, and he goes like full god mode, just as the League of Lois Lanes gets back on board their ship and they have a huge battle. But we don't watch a whole lot of the battle because Clark and Lois are making up. Which I kind of liked. You just have this, you see stuff happening behind them while they're talking.
Uh-huh.
Eventually, Jimmy snaps them out of it and he goes to fight. But it basically was a distraction because like you can't defeat a chaos god.
Hmm.
But while he is defeating Clark, Lois and Jimmy are sneaking up behind him and they steal the hat back so that the League can lock him back up again. So they go home. And then Clark says it's too late for dinner, so they go for coffee instead. And I was like, you just defeated an interdimensional chaos god. Aren't you hungry? Why is it too late for dinner?
Yeah, they almost like gave the impression that like, oh, it's 8 o'clock. Every single restaurant closes at 8 o'clock in Metropolis.
Oh, well, whatever. But after that, she goes home and opens the file and discovers the video of evil Superman destroying a city. And then he appears beside her and says the imprisonment didn't take. So he's still out there. And she wants more information about where this file came from, what it is, what it means. But he says it'll be more fun to watch her figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a chunk of kryptonite in this thing.
Chun chun chun.
Yes,
Because it wouldn't be a Superman show if we didn't have kryptonite.
of course. The next episode opens with all the previous villains in prison, but their cages are starting to open and they're all getting electrocuted.
Mm-hmm.
And Waller, the general, and Dr. Ivo appear and basically tell them today they're repaying their debt to society.
Uh-huh.
Another thing that I guess we haven't mentioned throughout the series, Clark discovers new powers.
Mm-hmm.
And in this episode, he discovers his super hearing. And I guess, spends days rescuing people because he can't stop hearing people calling for help. Jimmy is gone for several days. When he gets home, he finds him sort of half crazed, coffee cups everywhere. He hasn't slept since Jimmy left. And he also, in his super hearing crazed state, hears the general saying that after this operation, Superman will cease to be a problem permanently.
Uh-huh.
And throughout this, Jimmy's Flamebird account is blowing up because he's saving everybody and everybody's becoming more aware of him and following. I guess this is the closest to following Superman on social media that they can get
Yeah.
because I guess Jimmy has posted enough about Superman that they figure this is the most official way to figure out what Superman is doing
Yeah.
or communicate it with him in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And you also have Lois getting roped into working for her journalism hero, Vicky Vale, who I think Perry is trying to get her to work for the Daily Planet, but she's secretly there trying to get a promotion at her own newspaper back in Gotham.
Mm-hmm.
And she wants to expose Superman as the greatest danger to Metropolis. And he accidentally proves her right because he saves one of the loose criminals, the one named Mist, who can turn invisible. But because he's invisible, he causes an accident, but everyone sees Superman. So everybody thinks he did it on purpose.
Yeah.
And everybody's like jumping on this as a way to prove that Superman is evil and dangerous. And Lois is kind of conflicted because she knows that he's not, but also she has this file from the League of Lois Lanes that sort of proves that he is. And she's trying to figure out what to do about that.
Superman is a menace. Waves hand in J.K. Simmons.
She could be a good J.K. Simmons stand-in the DC universe, couldn't she? They should
Yeah.
lean into that. Yeah, this all culminates in a huge battle with Parasite, and he saps Superman's strength away, and Lois and Jimmy see Superman being carried away in a helicopter, but they don't see who did it. If they had, you would have noticed that, or she would have noticed it was her dad, but they just see him, the helicopter leaving, basically. So then in the next episode, Superman is being interrogated by the general who is screaming about Zero Day, which you get a flashback to when the Earth was attacked by an alien invasion. And the person seemingly in charge of this attack was dressed similarly to Superman, which is why they think Superman might be behind this.
Mm-hmm.
And during that invasion, I think everybody except him and Amanda Waller were killed.
Mm-hmm.
She was injured and he saved her, and they were the only survivors. So that's why he's now in charge of this operation. And you're not given really any information about what is going on here. There was like this portal and alien robots were pouring in, and then something happened and the portal closed and all the robots collapsed. And there's no explanation for any of this. The government came and cleaned up everything, and they've been turning all of this tech that was left behind into the weapons that the villains in the previous episodes have been using. So obviously Clark is really upset by all this. He starts questioning whether or not he might have been involved or his parents. He doesn't know why he was sent. But also, because of his horrified reaction, the general starts questioning whether or not he was involved, and he thinks that Superman might look too young to have been a part of this. And Waller wants him killed immediately, but he refuses, and she threatens his job. And by this point, all the criminals have been locked back up, except Livewire was somehow able to escape, and she sets Parasite free to kill Superman. And Superman refuses to fight, but he's knocked out of his cell, and Parasite starts sucking power out of the ship, growing bigger and bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And the general tries to take him on, but at this point, Livewire has broken everybody out, and now there's a big battle, and they all escape.
Yeah, I think Amanda Waller lets them out.
Oh.
Yeah, she like when she gets mad at the general, he's like, I'm the one in charge and we don't do anything unless I say so. She like, while she's walking out of the room, she hits a button on the table, which like turned off the cameras and allowed Livewire to break free.
I didn't realize that she did that on purpose. Like I noticed that she like threatened his job, but I didn't realize that
Mm-hmm.
she might have been behind the escape.
Yeah.
I just thought something random happened with Livewire and Livewire did it on purpose. No,
Mm-hmm.
that makes more sense actually.
Yeah, because she's trying to get rid of him
Okay.
because this is Amanda Waller.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. But yeah, everybody has escaped. Superman also escapes, but when he goes back to Lois and Jimmy, he tells them what happened and he thinks the Earth would be better off without him. And Lois tries to tell him that that's not true. But at that moment, Parasite appears, and now he's basically like a small kaiju, and Superman has to stop him. But of course, like how his powers work, any resistance only fuels him. Plus, he's also sucking power out of any building that he touches, and he eventually becomes like a Godzilla-sized kaiju, like towering over literally everything. So Lois and Jimmy use Jimmy's Flamebird account to reach out to the city, asking them to shut off the city's power, because without the power, he would be too weak to move. And he starts shrinking. And Superman defeats him by flying through his chest and pulling out Dr. Ivo. And I was thinking, like, he left behind the big parasite monster shell. What is the city going to do with that thing?
Apparently, they haven't figured it out yet
It's
because it's
just a
still
big dead
hanging around.
monster. Yeah, after everything is over, Amanda Waller informs the general that she's now in charge. And she name drops Checkmate, which I recognize, but I don't know exactly who they are, and says that they and the US government have authorized her to take over Task Force X. He answers to her now, and she wants Superman dead. Also, you get a scene with Jimmy discovering the file in Lois's purse. So now he knows about the potential for evil Superman.
Mm-hmm.
So the last episode opens with Clark having a vision of something like Zero Day, but when the leader's mask opens, he's inside. So he goes to confront the hologram thing of his father in his ship, and he tells him that he won't let him invade Earth, and he'll stop him if he ever comes back. And in subtitles that Clark can't understand, you see that Jor-El telling him that he would never hurt him, but Clark doesn't understand what he's saying. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess I still don't know exactly what's going on with the alien invasion. I have a feeling that they're kind of tying this into Zod and making it so that Jor-El was fighting Zod, and that's probably why
Yeah.
Krypton got blown up.
Uh-huh.
But they made it ambiguous enough that up until this point, you kind of thought that maybe Jor-El was evil, but I don't think that's the case, especially now that he
No.
has this subtitled revelation that he would never hurt him.
Yeah.
But then the main crux of this episode is they're going to Smallville for Thanksgiving, which was cute.
Woohoo! Thanksgiving episode.
Lois mentions her father going to be there, and I was like, finally. This is they did with this reveal what I was afraid that they were going to do with the Clark hiding that he is Superman. Like, this is the worst kept secret. For anybody who knows who Lois's father is, this is the worst kept
Yeah.
secret. It's like, I just want everybody to know this. I'm glad we're finally going to get this out in the open.
Yeah.
But then before they leave, they go to work, and Perry tells them that they were the worst interns he's ever had, so he's going to make them reporters instead.
I like this version of Perry.
Yeah. So they're all getting ready to leave, but Perry tells Jimmy that he needs him to stay. He needs to talk to him about Flamebird. So Clark and Lois end up getting to the Kents first, and everybody's congratulating them on their promotions. And Lois is kind of freaking out about her father coming, but Clark is trying to put her at ease until her father shows up and Clark realizes who he is. And he tells his parents right away, and then Jimmy finally gets there and he tells him, but they don't tell Lois right away. Everybody's kind of freaking out. Somewhere in here, the file from the League of Lois Lanes is also revealed, and Clark opens it and is instantly crippled by the kryptonite. And then, again, I'm not sure exactly what's going on with all the Kryptonian stuff. There's like Jor-El, you see Jor-El like waking up next to the symbol for Brainiac. I'm like, is Jor-El a hologram, or is he alive somewhere? I'm confused.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're supposed to know. I think it's supposed to be confusing.
Yeah. It is interesting, though, like that they're keeping that as a secret, as opposed to most other versions where they're just like, yep, this is a the thing.
And maybe he's never been a hologram for this whole show. Like they don't do the thing where like sometimes you see like he's clearly a hologram, like blue and electricy looking,
Hmm.
but like it's also other times he's like kind of hazy, and it's like maybe Clark was teleported somewhere where he is. Like I don't know. It's not clear,
Hmm.
which I kind of like that that's kind of a mystery that we'll keep exploring later on. But then at that point, also, Clark's ship comes to life, and General Lane is freaking out, telling the Kents that aliens are picking up where they left off 22 years ago. So he calls Amanda Waller and says he needs backup. And then Lois, at that point, realizes that he's the general that Clark had been talking about. And then it's not just Clark's ship. There's like another alien invasion actually happening.
Hmm.
There's a bunch of robots showing up that they have to fight. And somewhere in here, Jimmy figures out that the rock from the file hurts the robots like it hurt Clark. So Clark takes this thing up through this portal that's opened up to take out the robots. And he gets inside the main ship. And the robots there, like, they all have Brainiac's symbol on them. And his potentially hologram father is leading the way. Maybe he's not a hologram, I'm not sure. He's still not speaking English, and he gets to the heart of the ship, uses the kryptonite to punch through a giant crystal. The ship starts breaking up, and the portal closes. It cuts the ship in half. And then Clark wakes up somewhere. It seems like it's supposed to be like the Fortress of Solitude, but their own twist on it because it's like glowy and hazy. And
Hmm.
his father puts him inside a thing and shoots him back to Earth. And he's finally speaking in English, and he calls him Kal-El. He gets back to Earth, and the general's going to kill him until Lois jumps between them, and she tells him that Clark risked everything to protect Earth, and if he cares about her at all, he'll let him go. And then he gets another call from Waller, and he tells her it was a false alarm, they should stand down. And I guess that works, but also, why would she listen? Like, he just called her about an alien invasion, and now suddenly he's changed his story completely and says it was a false alarm. So why is she gonna take his word here?
Yeah, it's a bit confusing, especially since like Amanda Waller's known for being like you said shoot and no other questions are asked.
Mm-hmm. But also he disappears at this moment too. So maybe he's going to
Hmm.
try and talk to her. I don't know. But then they all go back inside and finally have Thanksgiving dinner, and Jimmy reveals that he sold Flamebird to the Daily Planet and now he's a millionaire. And then at the very end, we go back to space, and it looks like the portal that had opened up before, but I think it's just a window now, and someone is watching Earth, and like it's not obvious who it is, and it doesn't look like any version of Brainiac that I've ever seen, but the subtitle said it was Brainiac. His symbol is everywhere, so this is Brainiac.
Hmm.
And he goes and talks to someone that the subtitles identify as Kryptonian Warrior. And he says that he has a new planet for him. It's a planet in rebellion. But this Kryptonian Warrior says it doesn't matter. In the end, they will kneel. Which, I mean, it has to be Zod.
Yeah.
Like, why would they put a line in about somebody kneeling if it's not Zod?
Yeah. Like if you do it and then you're like, haha, it was a trick, I think that's cheap and not what you should do. So I think it is Zod.
Yeah, it has to be. But yeah, we went into way more detail than I was planning, but I really liked their show and I wanted to talk about so many things.
Yeah, like it's really nice that we have another Superman show that's so faithful to the character.
Hmm. Faithful to the character, and they put their own spin on so many things, but they
Yeah.
got Superman right,
Yes.
which seems to be something that a lot of people have trouble with these days.
Yeah, I think DC knows that their darker stories are selling, so they try to push that for a lot of things. And there's always a place for a dark story, but not always a dark story for specific characters, I think.
Hmm.
And I appreciate that we've gotten a few more lighthearted DC things this past
Yes.
year. What with My Adventures with Superman, Blue Beetle,
Merry Little Batman.
Merry Little Batman. I'm glad we got a lighthearted Batman thing again.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, there's never a shortage of Batman material, for better or for worse,
yeah.
depending on how you feel about the different versions of Batman. I'm not a big Batman fan. I really like the Batman I like, but I think the Batman I don't care for outweigh the Batman I enjoy. Don't come after me, please. It's just an opinion. But like just, personally I like more lighthearted stories, so I appreciate this one being lighthearted. I will say, and this is, I know, and obviously a personal thing. I think near the end, for me personally, they went a little too far with how much they beat up Superman. I think for me, it just slightly made me like, oh, I kind of thought this was a bit more lighthearted, but we really jumped into being super, like, it was dramatic. It went from being very lighthearted to dramatic very quickly, and it kind of like gave me a bit of a shock because I was like, oh, I kind of thought it was going to be a bit more lighthearted. So, like, jumping from that, I was not expecting that, and so it kind of gave me a bit of a shock that I didn't find myself enjoying some of the scenes. I was like, wow, this is, I'm uncomfortable watching Superman getting pummeled into the ground, which is kind of their intention because, you're not supposed to enjoy watching Superman get pummeled into the ground. If you are, he's probably being written incorrectly, and you're like, yeah, smash the stupid Superman. But personally, for me, I was not expecting it.
I guess that's something we didn't touch on either. Superman is not all-powerful in this show.
And I enjoy that.
Which I did like.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times Superman is like literally nothing can hurt him except for kryptonite. And that's not the case here. They're kind of going back to how he was earlier on in the comics. Yeah. Where he was very strong, but it wasn't like he could be not hurt by anything. Like eventually if he was beat up long enough, it would start to hurt.
But I'm excited for season 2, which I hope is still going. The last thing I heard about it was, like, I heard the creator saying that they're apparently going to go for a big major mood shift in the middle, which I'm a bit cautious about. Like, are we saying it's going to go real dark? Because I don't want that. I like the lightheartedness to it. Maybe it'll shift the other way. Lighthearted all the way.
If it's a tone shift in the other direction, maybe they go insanely goofy. Everyone goes to the Mixospitalic planet.
Oh gosh. And then, like, Jack Quaid has said he's been able to do some recording on it, so hopefully that means it's coming soon, because I will wait, but I don't like to wait, so.
So I really liked this show. It's one of the best superhero things I've seen in a long time.
It's got so much love for everything. And it really shows. A lot of things are sometimes made out of spite, and I appreciate this being made out of, like, love instead.
Yeah. Or made by committee.
Yeah.
Like, that's another problem these days. Too many cooks spoiling the broth.
Yeah, it's like, well, what will make people come and watch this?
Yeah. This feels like somebody had a vision. I want to do anime rom-com Superman. And they fully went through with it. And I really liked that. Okay, well, I guess that will be all for this episode. I'm sure we'll be back to talk about more things in the future. Hopefully, maybe season 2 at some point in a year or two, whenever it appears.
We'll both be patiently and impatiently waiting for it.
Yes, yes. But until then, do you want to let people know where they can find you if they want more from you?
Yep. You can find me on Instagram and also on Twitter, although I'm more active on Instagram at Katie Draws Things, where I have been working on a lot of fun comic book related things there. So check me out over there.
Okay. Well, we will see you next time. Thanks for listening to iHeart Animation. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and follow my co-hosts as well. My link tree and all of our links will be in the description below. If you want more of my content, all my podcasts are available on YouTube as well as most podcast platforms. If you enjoyed this show, check out one of the other podcasts or check out my Patreon for bonus and extended episodes you won't find anywhere else. We'll be back soon with another brand new episode, so thanks for listening and we'll see you next time.